Cliches. They come in many forms, such as the "it was all a dream" ending, to the cold open, put me to the homage, to the flashbacks, and of course, another name for these is tropes. And that's what this series is going to be about. Welcome to the pilot episode of the Trope Show. The show where I'm going to talk about tropes, obviously. And where better to start than the trope of parenting tropes, guys. Okay, parenting, obviously, we know what that is. It is bringing up your child and making sure they know right from wrong and helping them to grow into a respectable member of the community. So what tropes do we have for parenting? Well, there are a number of different parenting tropes, and we're going to go over a few of them in this episode. Let's first shine a light on the adoptive parent. Now, this is obviously when an unknown couple to the family agrees to adopt and raise a child for, well, it can be related as well, but agrees to adopt and raise a child for any number of reasons, such as the parents having passed away, or them just not being fit parents, just to name a couple of reasons. So, what examples of this trope am I going to use? Well, look no further than our literary example. Well, there's a couple of these too. Our first literary example is Oliver Twist, who was adopted by Mr. Brownlow in the famous Charles Dickens novel. And it turns out that Mr. Brownlow was his grandfather on his mum's side of the family. So why was he in a workhouse to begin with then? Okay. And then we have Harry Potter, whose parents are murdered right in front of him. Or, yeah, on Halloween night 1981 in his backstory. And so he is placed into the home, but not so much care of the Dursleys, his only living relatives at the time. His aunt and uncle from his mum's side of the family. Okay. And it's because his aunt is a blood relative, being the older sister of his mum, to keep him protected. And also from the same series, we have Neville Longbottom, whose parents were tortured into insanity by Death Eaters, landing them in St. Mungo's for the rest of their lives, leading him to be adopted by his grandmother on his dad's side of the family. Moving away from adopted parents, what about single parents? Okay, now, in real life, my brothers and I are example of this trope. We've been raised our whole lives by a single parent, and we're much better off because of it. So, but in terms of fictional single parent households, well, what do we have? For examples, we have Eric Cartman from South Park, who is being raised by his mum, Leanne, who is a single parent. Surprised, are you? I am not. Pardon me. And then, well, from Alone Again, Natural Diddley onwards, Ned Flanders in The Simpsons raises his sons, Rod and Todd, as a single father, but that's because he becomes widowed in that episode. Yeah, so I guess that's actually two birds with one stone I've killed there. Tackling single parenthood with what else but widow parents. Now, of course, I forgot to describe what a single parent household is, but I think I've covered that excellently. So, a widow parent then. Okay. Well, that's when either the mother or the father passes away while the children are growing up, or in whichever situation. And the widow parent then has to obviously look after the whole family. And Ned Flanders in The Simpsons is an example of this trope. From from episode I've just mentioned in the last category onwards. So he's been used twice as an example in this episode now. But to use him as an example of a single parent might not have been a fair thing to do, seeing as he's actually a widow parent, and that is why he's. Yeah, okay. I don't know of any other examples of widow parents, so let's get off of this subject and move on to the doting parent. Now, a doting parent is a parent that dotes over one child over the others and particularly favours them. Or it might be one that treats their child like a baby or a child, even if they're a grown up. Examples of doting parents. Are you ready about this? Are you ready for this? We have the Dursleys in Harry Potter to their son, Dudley. The classic example of doting parents. They're proud of all his achievements. They somewhat still treat him like an infant. And it's all about him under the Dursleys' roof. Classic example there of two doting parents. And of course, then, on the other side of the doting parent, it's also, we can say, domineering here, is Mrs. Lumsden to Timothy in the classic BBC sitcom Sorry. And she dotes on him in every sense of this word. She treats him like a kid, despite him being in his 40s. Check. That's the main thing that she does. So she's basically got him wrapped round her little finger. So, yeah, there you go. Manipulative. Right. Moving on now to the clueless or dumb parent trope. Well, if you want to look no further first than Homer Simpson in The Simpsons, obviously, he's an example of this. He's a father who is clueless about how to raise his own kids, and as a result of this, hardly ever gets involved with their lives. So, um, and he's too clueless about what to do in general. Okay, now, not every adult in South Park is a parent per se, but okay, nearly every adult in I say nearly, yes, nearly every adult in South Park, including the parents, are examples of this trope. So, with the only one to ever show any brains at all being Chef until he passes away. The kids are genuinely more intelligent than the adults in South Park. Okay. Okay. Now, I don't want to really talk about this type of parent trope. So, we're going to leave that one out because it's such a horrible topic and a horrible trope for parenting. Because I've just been talking about different types of parents under this category. But what about methods of parenting? Now, okay, here we go. When you're very little, you might have been given time out, which is basically being sent to the corner for a few minutes to think about what you've done, or placed in any form of disciplinary zone to think about what you've done. Examples of this trope being used in fiction first, well, sadly, not many. No, not many fictional TV shows have actually shown young kids being disciplined in this way. You might occasionally see them being sent to their rooms, or if they're butters in South Park, and this would come under the actual trope of parenting that I didn't want to cover. The abusive parent, because Butter's parents are definitely this. They constantly ground him for everything, even the tiniest and most trivial of matters, such as leaving the pantry disorganized after taking something out. How trivial can you ground him over? How trivial a matter? And grounding. Okay, now grounding is basically a timeout method for older kids. They'll be probably sent to their rooms on this, or they'll be forbidden from going outside to play. And, of course, in web animation, you'll see characters getting grounded for life. Yes, grounded for life. This is a trope unto itself, in which these animations would depict the kids getting grounded for X amount of 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 years. Okay. Okay. Uh, just say a number and have a roll with it, but put the word of that number in instead of the literal row of digits there. And then, of course, on the bit of a younger side of this, we have the teenage parents or teenage pregnancy trope. When a teenage girl gets pregnant and becomes a mum. There are literally loads of examples of this such trope happening. It can happen with boys becoming teenage dads too, minus the getting pregnant bit. So, okay. So some examples of this happening then. We're just going to cover it in fiction here, so as not to embarrass anyone in real life by listing them. But examples of this would happen in such films as 15 and Pregnant, which is about Tina Spangler, a 15-year-old girl who falls pregnant and gives birth to a son. And then we have Juno, where a 16-year-old girl falls pregnant and gives birth. Now, we don't ever see any scenes of them parenting their newborns here. It's just chronicling their pregnancies. Enough said. Now, loving parents. Well, there's loads of examples of that too. So, and of course, as a parent who actually loves and cares about their children unconditionally. And where to begin with that category of tropes? I'm just going to list off some examples of loving parents in their own way from certain works of fiction. Okay. Now, Harry Potter. Who's the loving parent in that, you might be wondering? It was Lily Potter's love for her son that protects him from Voldemort, that whole bond of blood magic. Then we have the Weasleys, who take Harry in basically as a surrogate son. And kind of show him, they do show him the type of family life he's never come to know with the Dursleys. Although they're not his parents, but they are loving parents to their children all the same. Marge Simpson in The Simpsons is a loving mother to her children. I wouldn't say Homer isn't, but I've already said about him being a clueless parent. And a bit of an uncaring one, so yeah. Ned Flanders, he's a loving father to his boys, if there's anything to go by. Loving parents in South Park is basically every parent except Butter's parents. Although they do have moments where they show their love for him, but they're rare compared to the moments in which they don't. Which is just about every time you see them on screen with him. Dear, oh dear. Seriously, that kid never gets a break. Okay. Okay, because there was so much ground to cover there. I think we're going to stop this episode here. And I'll say the next category of tropes I'm going to cover will be holiday tropes. Okay, that's covering a whole wide range of holidays. So we'll see you for that one. Until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and have us a magical time.